But Cody did share with me that when Robyn came into the family and he was experiencing this
Yeah.
divine love, this special
Yeah.
love, that he wanted to raise every wife up to that level.
Mhm.
I don't think that that's fair for him to even say that.
Why?
Oh, because we're all supposed to be Robyn? I'm sorry. I am Meri. I'm not going to be Robyn. I don't want to be Robyn.
What if everything we thought we knew about sister wives was a lie? What if the silence we mistook for peace was actually a prison, and the woman they tried to erase is finally the one telling the truth? I'm Amin, and this is TLC Soapbox, where we pull back the curtain on the secrets they never wanted aired. From leaked footage to legal threats, from whispered sabotage to public collapse, this is the beginning of the end for Cody and Robyn's carefully crafted empire. And Meri, she's not just walking away, she's taking the story with her. It was 2:14 a.m. when the internet blinked awake. Not with a headline, not with a press release, but with a dim, shaky 2-minute video posted by an anonymous user on a buried Reddit thread. Just grainy footage and muffled sound. At first, it looked like backstage chaos. A tiled hallway, the crinkle of paper, someone's hurried footsteps echoing against cement. Nothing that would warrant a second glance. But then came the voices. Quiet at first, barely audible, and then unmistakable. Fans leaned in, adjusting volume, boosting audio filters. It wasn't speculation anymore. It was Robyn's voice, sharp and panicked. "She's planning something," she whispered. The breath behind the words was thin, almost clipped. "Meri's been talking to people who support her leaving. If she goes public with the truth, you won't survive this. Cody's done. We're finished." A pause. Then Cody's voice cut through the static, lower but charged, anger barely caged. "She doesn't have the guts. She's been threatening this for years. We'll bury her." With edits, that line didn't feel scripted. It felt lived in, weaponized, and it landed like a punch in the gut for anyone who'd watched the show from the beginning. The video was chaotic, grainy, a digital blur, but the meaning couldn't have been clearer. This wasn't an outburst, it was a strategy. A war room with no cameras and no audience, where Meri's silence wasn't just expected, it was engineered. By the time moderators confirmed the source, it was too late. The fire had already started. Fans were downloading it, reposting it, quoting it. "Her image belongs to us," one user typed, repeating Cody's words like a warning shot. And just like that, the narrative sister wives had carefully curated for over a decade cracked open at the seams, before sunrise. While the internet combusted with theories, timestamps, and frame-by-frame breakdowns of the leak, Meri sat in silence. The snow outside her window fell in heavy flakes, blanketing the quiet Utah town in a hush that felt almost sacred. She wasn't in Flagstaff anymore. Not surrounded by crew, not mic'd up or made up. Just a woman alone, with her hands wrapped around a steaming mug and her phone buzzing like a distant siren. Everyone wanted a quote. Producers, former cast members, podcasters, journalists, even therapists she hadn't spoken to in years. But Meri didn't flinch. She had been waiting for this. She hadn't reacted when the cameras were turned off. She hadn't argued when scenes were re-edited. She hadn't spoken when her story was trimmed to fragments. But every night, when the world was finally quiet, she had turned on her own camera. Unfiltered, unglammed. No crew, no second takes. Just her voice, a single light, and the weight of everything unsaid. It wasn't revenge, it was documentation. A woman preserving what they had tried to erase. In one of the videos, her eyes were rimmed with exhaustion. Her voice cracked not from weakness, but from finally letting it break. "They think I'll stay," she said, "that I'll keep protecting the brand, the image, the man. But I'm finished. I won't carry their silence anymore, and I won't carry their shame." She looked directly into the lens as if daring someone to flinch. "It's impossible to leave Robyn without being labeled unstable, but I'm going, and I will speak the truth." In that moment, Meri wasn't broken. She was liberated. And in the stillness of that snowy room, she wasn't afraid. She was armed, with truth, with timing, and with nothing left to lose. The silence didn't last. As Meri's voice began to ripple across platforms, something darker surfaced beneath the noise. Evidence. It started with a leaked message from TLC's internal PR team, casually worded but deeply calculated. Concerned about Meri's emotional well-being, Robyn Brown has contacted several podcast producers and mental health professionals with whom Meri has communicated. The message didn't just imply concern, it documented interference. Robyn hadn't just distanced Meri from the spotlight, she had been orchestrating her isolation. Then came the cease and desist, a digital copy of a letter signed by Robyn sent to a small podcast that had quietly extended an interview offer to Meri. It accused the platform of attempting to solicit content that could damage Robyn and Cody's public image. legalese dressed as damage control. But to fans who had followed the unraveling, it reeked of censorship. The story was no longer speculative, it was systematic. But the final fracture came without a lawyer's stamp. A simple Instagram story, black and white. No caption, just Mary's hand clutching an old lease to her Las Vegas home. At the top corner, barely visible, was a yellow sticky note. Faded ink, unmistakable handwriting. Don't tell anyone yet. Let's deal with this internally. Robyn's voice, this time not whispered, but written. It wasn't just paperwork, it was proof. Not of disagreement, but betrayal. Quiet and strategic, disguised as concern. And for the first time, fans weren't just angry, they were awake. He lost control in less than 90 seconds. Cody's voice, once measured and media-trained, erupted into something raw, fragmented, almost desperate. The leaked clip picked up mid-rant, but the words hit like a freight train. She lacks gratitude. She wants to burn everything I gave her. For what? A story? A victim complex? The room had gone silent. Not with reverence, just stunned discomfort. A producer tried to step in. Cody kept going. Security was called. And just like that, the man who had shaped the show's core identity for over a decade was escorted off the set. There was no press release, no statement, just a leak, an internal HR document quietly circulated and promptly screenshot. Due to confrontation with production personnel and non-compliance with filming requirements, Cody Brown will be temporarily removed from Sister Wives production for a duration of 18 days. A footnote in corporate language, but a landslide in practice. For the first time, the show continued without him. Robyn was gutted, not because he crossed a line, he'd done that before, but because the line was finally enforced. Her influence had always been indirect, but absolute. She didn't need power if Cody was in the room. He absorbed criticism, deflected heat, rearranged the story to shield her. But now, he was gone. And the walls she'd relied on weren't just cracking, they were being examined. Producers started combing through footage that had never aired, cut segments, rejected arcs, quiet manipulations, arguments in corners, passive-aggressive silences, narrative shifts that now felt less like edits and more like erasures. Cody had imploded on set, but it was Robyn's mask that began to slip. With the patriarch sidelined, the show was no longer under their control, and the story was finally starting to tell itself. No caption, no context, just a single black and white photo posted without warning to Meri's Instagram story. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just quiet enough to be deafening. Her hand, steady but tense, clutched an old lease from her former Las Vegas home. At first glance, it was just a document. Faded ink, typed lines, bureaucratic, forgettable text. But what stopped everyone cold wasn't the lease. It was what clung to it. A yellow sticky note, slightly curled at the edges with 5 handwritten words, "Don't discuss this just yet." Beneath it, in softer script, "Let's deal with this internally." And the unmistakable signature of Robyn. It hit harder than a confession, because it wasn't just what was said. It was what was assumed. Robyn hadn't asked Meri, she'd instructed her, framed concern as command. And in that single frame, the myth of unity began to crumble. The photo wasn't a bombshell, it was a breadcrumb, a glimpse into how silence had been bought, encouraged, normalized. The lease wasn't about a house. It was about a woman being asked to disappear on schedule, quietly, for the sake of someone else's storyline. Fans didn't need more than that. They knew what they were seeing. The sticky note was small, but it screamed. Years of suspicion were suddenly weightless. Robyn hadn't just benefited from Meri's silence, she had authored it. And for the first time, it wasn't filtered through edits, reunion specials, or controlled confessionals. It was raw. It was hers. And it was real. No promo, no countdown. Just a quiet upload at midnight on a YouTube channel no one had heard of. Truth from Liz's porch. One video, one thumbnail, one title. The Uncensored Journal of Meri. Before They Rewrite Me. For 9 unedited minutes, there was no music, no lighting, no makeup. Just Meri, wrapped in a gray sweater, sitting on an old wooden swing, snowflakes catching in her hair. Her voice was hoarse, either from the cold or the weight of everything she hadn't said. And she didn't start with rage. She started with sorrow. "I gave it my all for them," she whispered. "When I wanted to scream, I stayed quiet. When I was gaslit, I stayed loyal. When they brought me betrayal, edited down, and packaged for television, I accepted it." She paused, long enough that it hurt to sit in the silence. "But this is my voice. I'm the only one who gets to shape it now." There were no names, no accusations, just a woman choosing not to be erased. She spoke about a man who turned her heartbreak into leverage, about wives who weaponized concern, about moments when her grief was twisted into suspicion. Her words weren't loud, but they sliced like glass. And by sunrise, the world had listened. 3.2 million views, hundreds of thousands of comments. Not just fans, survivors, truth tellers, women who had spent years swallowing their own silence. It was no longer just reality TV. It was reality. Meri's voice, once trimmed into confessionals and clipped into background noise, was finally leading the story. And nothing, no edit, no PR statement, no lawsuit, could cut it back down. It didn't come from a tabloid or a podcast or even a leak. It came from family. Robyn's estranged half-sister, Belle, appeared on TikTok one afternoon with no fanfare, no intro music, just a direct look into the camera and the line, "If you want to see the real Robyn, take a seat." What followed was a 45-minute expose that didn't shout, it cut. Calm, composed, and chillingly detailed, Belle didn't just offer anecdotes, she recited a history. She spoke of growing up under Robyn's shadow, of watching her use tears not as a sign of vulnerability, but as a tactic. Robyn learned early that if she cried, Belle said, people would bend. Cody wanted someone who could sob while he twisted the knife, and Robyn figured out how to be that person. She described years of subtle guilt, religious guilt, emotional guilt, manipulation dressed as love, sympathy crafted for the camera, and all of it, Belle claimed, had been rehearsed. The video went viral within hours, 10 million views in a day. And suddenly, Robyn's carefully polished image, a devoted wife, a peacemaker, a misunderstood heart, was in freefall. Her response didn't help. A cold-typed statement delivered through a publicist. The exploitation of family concerns for public spectacle breaks my heart. But there was no heart left in it. No ownership. No cracks in the glass. For fans, it wasn't just betrayal. It was confirmation. And the woman who had built a career behind a veil of innocence now stood center stage, stripped of her script. He filed it like a man trying to put the genie back in the bottle. A 57-page complaint, stamped and submitted to Coconino County Court, accusing Meri of breaching shared privacy agreements and damaging the Brown family brand. Cody wanted $230,000 in damages and a court-issued gag order. The filing read less like a legal document and more like a tantrum dressed in legalese. But Meri didn't call a press conference. She didn't hire a high-profile attorney. She turned on her camera. The video opened with a hollow laugh. Not mocking, just empty, as if even she was tired of how predictable it had become. "It's a brand now, isn't it?" she said. "I thought it was a family." Then she held up a page, crumpled at the corner, signature smudged. A draft of an NDA, not from TLC, not from her lawyer, from Robyn, dated 2020. Meri said it had followed a heated argument over money. Christine had refused to sign it. So had Janelle. It was never executed. "You're embarrassed by my story now," she said quietly, "but you don't get to control it. You let them label me broken, cold, inactive. You let Robyn paint my silence as instability. I'm not unstable. I'm free." The court didn't take long. The injunction was denied. Legal experts called the suit weak, performative, a guaranteed PR failure. Cody's attempt to contain the story only amplified it. And in the end, it wasn't a court ruling that broke him. It was Meri's voice, clear and unshakable, saying the one thing he could never edit: no. The change didn't come with an announcement. It came in silence. One day, TLC's Season 19 teaser focused on Robyn and Cody. Fresh starts, new chapters, soft lighting, hopeful piano music. The next, it was gone, replaced without fanfare. Now the screen opened to Meri walking alone through the empty halls of her Flagstaff rental, her footsteps echoing like memory. Christine stood in her kitchen, eyes locked on a producer just off screen. "For too long, none of us spoke," she said, her voice steady, "and we were harmed by that silence." Janelle followed with a tremble in her throat. "We thought protecting the family meant swallowing the truth, but it just meant we disappeared." The shift wasn't subtle, it was seismic. TLC wasn't just airing a new season, they were rewriting the narrative they'd helped curate for over a decade. Robyn and Cody, once the network's chosen centerpiece, were now ghosted in their own story. Promotional clips dropped them quietly. Press packages were sent out without their names. Even the upbeat theme music was replaced with something eerie, almost mournful. And then came the leaked scene. A private meeting caught on camera through a paper-thin wall. Robyn's voice, tense and pleading, "You're not getting it. If Meri tells the truth, the entire narrative shifts. TLC becomes an accomplice." The room on the other side went silent. She wasn't wrong. The network had protected them for years, edited around damage, polished dysfunction. But now, the shield was gone. And the wives who had once been background characters in their own lives were stepping forward, not as survivors, but as the new core of the franchise. Not every story gets a second chapter, but TLC had made its choice, and it no longer belonged to Cody. By the time the tell-all aired, the audience wasn't watching for revelations. They were watching for reckoning. And Suki Krishnan, calm and composed, did not let the moment slide past. She asked Robyn directly, "Why won't you watch past clips? Why do you always look away?" Robyn fumbled, her voice shaking just enough to sound sincere. "They're too painful," she said, "too destructive." But the camera didn't cut away. It held. And in that still frame, Robyn smiled. Soft, almost amused, while footage rolled behind her, showing Cody dismissing, gaslighting, and weaponizing silence. The dissonance hit like a slap. Janelle didn't bother with subtlety. She looked right into the lens and said what fans had screamed for seasons: "You can't even mention Robyn without Cody shutting down. She's his sacred cow. Untouchable. That's the truth." No one flinched, no one objected, because everyone in the room knew. This wasn't a family anymore. It was a collapsing kingdom with its crown cracked and tarnished. Christine, pressed about Meri's unraveling, didn't hesitate. "Her story was rewritten for years," she said. "We all saw it. We just stayed quiet." The guilt hung in the air. But it wasn't shame. It was clarity, a final breath before the storm ended. And Cody? He didn't fight. He didn't shout. He didn't even defend himself. He sat in silence, jaw tight, eyes unfocused. The man who once commanded the room with volume and bravado was now a ghost in his own tale. Whatever script he thought he controlled had unraveled. He wasn't the narrator anymore, just a subject under scrutiny. The women had found their voices. The story had shifted hands. And the patriarch, once untouchable, was now just another man trying to survive the truth he never thought would see the light. If you felt the shift, if you saw through the edits, if you always knew something wasn't right, this is your moment. Meri's voice is just the beginning. Subscribe to TLC Soapbox for deeper dives, untold truths, and the receipts they can't bury. I'm Amin, and together, we're not just watching the fall of a family, we're witnessing the rise of voices that refuse to stay silent. Hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't blink, because the next chapter is already being written.